Okay, everyone. I think we can all agree on one thing. Getting a huge medical bill after you went to the ER, it's the worst, like, insult to injury, right?
Yeah, no kidding. The way healthcare pricing works or doesn't work, it's crazy. Makes it so much worse when you're already dealing with, being sick or injured.
Exactly. So for this deep dive, we're going to give you some really good info that comes from this book, The Price We Pay by Marty Makary. It's all about how to keep from, getting totally ripped off on your next ER bill.
That's a deep dive I think a lot of people need.
Yeah, I think so too.
Yeah.
Okay, so the Makary talks about this thing he calls the two contracts in one. What's that all about?
So think about it. You're in the ER, maybe freaking out a little, and they hand you this form, right? A consent form. Seems pretty normal, just agreeing to get treated. But, and this is the sneaky part, they don't always tell you that that form also has a whole bunch of financial stuff hidden in there.
So you're basically signing away your rights to, like, dispute any charges or something.
Kind of, yeah. You're basically saying, okay, charge me whatever you want.
It's like taking advantage of people when they're not really thinking straight.
Exactly. You're worried about getting better, not reading legal mumbo jumbo. But here's the good news. You have a lot more power than you think.
Oh, really? Tell me more.
There's this federal law, EMTALA, stands for Emergency Medical Treatment and Active Labor Act. And this is a big one. It says hospitals have to treat anyone who comes in with an emergency, whether they can pay or not, insurance or no insurance.
Wow, seriously.
Hmm.
So even if I haven't signed any forms, they can't just turn me away.
Nope. They can't refuse to treat you just because of money or insurance. And knowing that, knowing your rights under EMTALA, that is huge.
Okay, so how do we use that to our advantage when we're dealing with those tricky contracts, I mean?
Here's a trick straight from Makary. Always, always ask for a paper form.
A paper form? What paper?
Okay, so with a paper form, you can make changes. Makary says, cross out the part that makes you agree to all the charges.
Wait, seriously, I can just, cross it out?
Yeah, they might look at you funny, but you can totally do that.
That's a good tip. Okay, so let's say we get through the ER visit, then weeks later, bam, here comes the bill. And it's like $1 zillion. What then?
First, don't freak out. Makary says these bills, they're often full of mistakes, confusing language, the whole 9 yards.
Yeah, tell me about it. It's like trying to decode some secret message, all those medical codes and stuff.
Exactly. And then you try calling the billing department, and it's even worse. They either don't know anything or they can't, say anything besides their script. It's a nightmare.
Totally. And meanwhile, you get this giant bill hanging over you.
Yep. But here's where things get interesting again. Makary talks about this website, healthcarebluebook.com. And this is a game changer.
Healthcarebluebook.com. Isn't that the one that shows you, like, what things should cost? For medical procedures, I mean.
That's the one. It shows you what hospitals are actually getting paid for different procedures in your area. It's like your secret weapon against crazy medical bills.
Okay, that sounds really useful. And I think some employers, they give you access to it as part of your benefits, right?
Yeah, definitely something worth checking. See if your work offers something like that.
So, okay, let's say we've used this healthcare blue book thing, found out what a fair price should be. Do we, like, march into the hospital and demand our money back?
No, not quite. Makary says you got to be strategic, stay calm, polite, but firm.
Right. Don't want to make a scene. Got it.
Right. So call the hospital, but ask specifically for the director of revenue cycle.
Director of Revenue Cycle. Sounds kind of scary.
I know, right? But trust me, this is the person who can actually change your bill.
Okay, so what do I say to this person?
This is where Healthcare Blue Book comes in. You tell them nicely that you checked your bill and it doesn't match up with the fair prices.
So basically, hey, I did my homework and you're charging me too much.
Well, be a little more diplomatic, but yeah, remember, you're trying to work something out, not fight.
Right. Keep things friendly.
Exactly. Be nice but firm. You can even say, hey, I didn't sign that first contract in the ER, so I don't have to pay these crazy prices.
Oh, good point. That gives us some leverage then. But let's be real. They're not just going to give in right away, are they?
Probably not, no. Be prepared for a little back and forth. They might try to offer you a small discount or a payment plan, but you got to stick to your guns. Don't settle for anything less than what's fair based on your research.
So what if they just won't budge? What happens then?
If they absolutely refuse to negotiate, you just politely end the conversation.
What happens next?
Well, there's a good chance they'll send your bill to collections.
Uh-oh, nobody wants that. Collections are a nightmare.
It can be stressful, yeah, but don't worry, you're still in a good spot. When the collections agency calls, you just say this: I appreciate you calling, but please send me a written record that shows I actually owe this money.
Wait, that's it? Just ask for written proof? But does that actually work? What if they send me proof?
That's the magic phrase because they're legally required to show you why you owe what they say you owe. A lot of times, especially if you didn't sign that first contract, they can't actually do that.
Wow, so we're using their own rules against them.
Exactly. And it's all thanks to the Fair Debt Collection Practices Act, the FDCPA. That's the law that protects us from unfair debt collection practices.
This is amazing. I feel like I'm finally starting to get this, like, how to actually navigate this whole system, you know? One last question. What if they get really serious and sue us?
It's possible, but not super common. They might try to say there was an implied contract because you got their services.
So even though I didn't sign anything, they can still come after me.
They might try, but even then, the courts, they look at whether the charges are reasonable.
Okay, that makes me feel a little better. So what we're learning is we always have options. We don't have to just accept a crazy medical bill without asking questions.
Exactly. Knowing your rights and options, that's real power. But there's more. We've just scratched the surface of how to avoid paying too much on those ER bills.
Okay, so we've talked about some really good ways to, like, fight back against these ER bills, you know?
Yeah. We've given you some weapons to fight those unfair charges for sure. But you can also get ahead of it, avoid those crazy costs in the first place.
Oh, okay, I like that. Sounds a lot better than dealing with collections and all that.
For sure, for sure. Mapari, he's got some good advice on that. One of his top tips is to always really look over your bill carefully, see if there are any charges that just seem way too high, the ones that make you go, what?
Like they charged me $50 for an ice pack, that kind of thing.
Exactly. Don't be afraid to ask about those charges. There's something called usual, customary, and reasonable rates for these medical procedures. Find out what those are in your area, and then you can compare your bill to that.
Usual, customary, and reasonable rates. Is there like a website for that, or where do I find that information?
Usually you can get it from your insurance company, or you can try calling some healthcare advocacy groups. They can be really helpful.
Okay, good to know. So let's say I do find some weird charges on my bill. What do I do then?
First, call the hospital's billing department. Explain what you're seeing, nicely, of course. If they're not helpful, you might want to talk to a consumer rights lawyer or maybe a medical billing advocate. They can help you deal with the hospital and try to negotiate for you.
Like calling in the professionals if we need them.
Yeah, exactly. They know all the ins and outs, so it takes some of the pressure off you. And it's good to know you have someone on your side if things get complicated.
This is so helpful, honestly. It feels a lot less scary now, knowing all this stuff.
Mhm.
And even if we do end up owing something, it sounds like we can still negotiate, right?
Right. Definitely. Hospitals, collections agencies, they're often willing to settle for less than the full amount,
Yeah.
especially if you've done your research and you know what you're talking about.
So negotiation is always an option. Just got to be smart about it.
Yeah, exactly. The important thing is to be informed, be assertive, and don't give up. You've got to stand up for yourself and ask questions. You've got more power than you realize.
I love that. This whole conversation has been so empowering. It's like we're giving people the tools to actually take control of their healthcare costs.
Mm-hmm.
But this also makes me think, like, why is this system so messed up in the first place? Why can't they just tell us what things cost up front?
That's a really good question, and it's something that Makary talks a lot about in his book. There's a lot going on behind the scenes in the healthcare system. It's complicated.
Well, let's talk about it. Is there anything we can do as patients to try to change things?
Absolutely. One of the most important things is to push for more transparency in healthcare pricing. Think about it. What if you could compare prices for medical procedures just like you do when you're booking a flight or a hotel?
Oh my gosh, that would be amazing. No more wondering what you're getting into.
Exactly. More transparency would be great for patients, and it would also make hospitals compete with each other on price. And that could actually make healthcare cheaper for everyone in the long run.
That makes so much sense. It seems like everybody wins, right? But realistically, can we actually change this? It feels like it's been this way forever.
It won't be easy, that's for sure. But change always starts with people knowing about the problem and then doing something about it. Makary, he talks about the power of patients speaking up. We need to demand transparency and make sure those in charge are doing the right thing. Things like contacting our elected officials, supporting groups that are fighting for healthcare reform, and just telling our friends and family about this stuff. That all makes a difference.
it's starting to feel like we actually have some power here. It's not just about figuring out the system, it's about making it better.
Yeah, you got it. Our voices, our actions, they all add up. Maybe one day we'll look back and be like, how did we ever put up with that crazy system?
Now that's a future I can get behind. But for now, let's focus on helping people deal with things as they are. We've covered a lot. Anything else we should really emphasize before we wrap up this deep dive?
Wow, I feel like we've really given everyone a ton of tips and tricks, like a whole arsenal for fighting these ER bills. From knowing their rights to negotiating and even like changing the system itself.
Yeah, totally. And the big thing to remember, you're not in this alone. It's a crazy system, but we can take charge, learn how it works and fight for what's fair.
I'm with you on that. So last question. If our listeners take away just one thing from this whole deep dive, what should it be?
I want them to feel empowered, like they can handle this. You have rights, there are resources out there, and you can absolutely fight for a fair price. Don't be afraid to challenge the system. Stand up for yourself.
That's a great message to end on. And for anyone who wants to really dig into this stuff, we got to recommend Makary's book, The Price We Pay. It's eye-opening, to say the least, and it really gets into the nitty-gritty of how healthcare pricing works. Couldn't agree more. And don't forget about healthcarebluebook.com. It's a lifesaver when you're dealing with all those confusing medical bills.
All right, folks, that's it for our deep dive on ER bills. Hope you learned a lot, and most importantly, that you feel empowered to take control.
Remember, knowledge is power. The more you know about how this whole healthcare system works, the better you can protect yourself.
Thanks for joining us on the deep dive. We'll be back soon with another awesome topic.
Until then, stay curious.